Well, happy Easter again, everyone. Um, I've been thinking as I've prepared this talk, I've been thinking about what Easter meant to me as a child and what it means to me now. And I was thinking back to childhood, and I remember coloring eggs and eating those little chocolate eggs for days, which I think those are still around. Those are still a hit. And my mom would bring home a huge Easter basket for me and my twin brother, and each of them had a huge bunny in them. And we would, if one bunny was bigger, the other brother would get, jealous, but you got the bigger bunny, and we would eat the ears first, probably thinking that was the humane way to go about it. And we would, the ears are solid usually, and then you get to the body and it's hollow, and when you're kind of disappointed, you want the whole thing to be solid. But so all these memories happen. And it turns out I didn't never stop to ask. I never stopped to ask, what are these Easter eggs? What are these bunnies all about? And so it comes to my mind later that these are springtime fertility symbols that were borrowed from the pagan traditions. Um, and it was so appropriate. I was telling people before service that I had two bunnies visit in right out here, just right about 5 feet from where I am, outside the window, and they were just not shy at all. They were just kind of hanging out there, and so I got a beautiful video of those two bunnies. Um, how appropriate on Easter. So I think about all these symbols, and of course, this is juxtaposed with memories of sitting in church as a child and learning that this is the time when we remember that Jesus died for our sins, that he was resurrected, and that he will return to judge the living and the dead. But as much as church talked about the good news, I remember my church in particular, there was like, marketing, it was splattered everywhere. Good news, the good news, the good news. But it didn't get through to me. It was confusing to me because it was intermixed with messages of guilt and original sin and shame and fear, hell, and things that only, to me, looking back, that they're things that served the church, but they are not things that served my soul. And I know that from talking to many of you, you were raised in traditional Christian churches or other churches of other kinds where the images and ideas that you were raised with, you lost interest in them because you couldn't relate to them. They didn't make sense to you, or you were repulsed by them, somewhere on that spectrum. And many people found unity or new thought spiritual movements by mistake, by fate, by grace. And when you found it, you were thinking, if you were like me, you thought, wow, I didn't know something like this really existed. Feels so refreshing. It feels like the truth. It feels like something that I can stand behind and not take entire elements of theology and say, well, don't worry about that for now. Let's just focus over here, right? The whole thing makes sense. So I was relieved to find out that something like unity was out there because my soul was hungering. It was hungering for this church experience because it was hungering for community. It was hungering for to worship. It was hungering to have spiritual insights. It was hungering for principles, and it was hungering to understand the Bible in a new way, and that way is symbolic. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. And that when we talk about the Bible and talk about the Christian liturgical calendar, of which Easter is a part, unity helps make sense of it so it's relevant for our lives today. And it does so by metaphysically or symbolically interpreting the Bible. And there's some real beauty and power around these concepts. And I want to read to you, actually, I'm going to share a couple slides, a reading that captures to me the essence of Easter. And Unity published this. Let me just share my screen. Unity published this a few years ago. And it's from a New Thought minister Galen McDowell. I think I got his name correct, but read along with me. Easter is a story about the overcoming power of God in an individual life. Easter is a reminder that we have within us the power to overcome any obstacle in our way. The resurrection represents our power to overcome, to restore, to renew, whatever it is we're trying to revive. And the Christ in you has never been sick, broke, or unhappy. The Christ in you is your true spiritual wholeness that transcends your mental and physical natures. Therefore, you can proclaim your spiritual wholeness in the midst of any storm when you understand that God in you can never be kept in the tomb of fear, despair, lack, sickness, confusion, and doubt. I love that last sentence. The God in you can never be kept in the tomb of fear, despair, lack, sickness, confusion, doubt. This is where, some of these motifs and themes of this symbolic Easter start to be more powerful. And if I got it wrong, that was Reverend Galen McDowell. So to me, this is exciting because it means we get to resurrect every aspect of our lives if we so desire, and that we have the overcoming power to do it. So our co-founders, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, and the co-founder of CSL, Ernest Holmes, would call up this overcoming power using something called affirmations and denials. And I'm going to focus on just a couple of denials real quick. Denials are saying that is not true. And here's some examples. The past has no power over me. What other people think of me has no power over me. My mistaken opinions and my erred opinions about myself have no power over me. Fear about the conditions of the world cannot touch my soul. And this is basically just putting the hand up to the temporary conditions of the world that want to creep in every time you open Instagram or Facebook or the news or whatever. All these things want to creep in to your fear, your nervous system reflexes and all that. Don't let them, because we're busy resurrecting ourselves and we don't have time for that stuff. So these denials are one way. You can think of denials all day, but they're one way we can roll away the stone of what was, so we can awaken to what is, to what the real reality is. Unity calls that the absolute reality. So we can awaken to all of these God qualities. Now, there's another aspect of these denials. Deepak Chopra said very fittingly, awakening is not changing who you are, but discarding who you are not. So just like Michelangelo chipped away everything that was not David, he started by just chipping away everything that's not David until the masterpiece is exposed. I'm not sure what your song process is, Amy, when you write a song, but it's like you tweak and you tune and you try out things. You go, that's not it. That minor key there is not working. This note, this lyric, and then you're crafting this masterpiece by getting rid of all the things that is not the masterpiece. So I think, bringing this back to how we resurrect ourselves, I think we all have elements of our life where we have rolled away obstacles in our efforts to be born anew, and that we have all overcome seemingly insurmountable. People in this room have crossed seemingly insurmountable obstacles. And I had those times of my life. I mean, there are many, but I was thinking about one last night, a longer period in my life that didn't have a quick epiphany. But I'll tell you that there was a long period when I was in grade school and I was terribly depressed. I was bullied in school. And at the same time, my home life wasn't happy. Now, while my mother was loving in many ways, there was a long phase of my youth where she was verbally abusive and cruel. And my father was emotionally removed and he couldn't protect us or wouldn't protect us. And what made matters worse was he worked the graveyard shift. So he just wasn't there physically a lot. He wasn't available a lot. And I would cry so much. I remember there weren't many places to go for privacy, so I would cry in the shower. And I kind of remember I had this strong memory of being 12 years old, just crying in the shower, and that being the habit, just crying and crying and crying, where nobody could hear me, nobody could see me. And so resurrection happened for me. There was no, I was thinking of it, there was no single thing that resurrected me. It took a while. Yes, it was the unconditional love of my sister when the rest of my family wasn't showing that. Yes, it was music and community that came with it. Yes, it was drumming. It was the friends that came along that modeled God for me. And it was resurrecting my relationship with God of my understanding. So I must have glimpsed. Well, I'm sorry, I'm reading the notes. Next slide. There was nothing to read. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, but you could hear me, right? Right? Okay. Yeah, you could hear me. Okay, good. There were only 2 slides. I guess not everybody could see them. Sorry, my bad. So let me roll back a minute. I must have glimpsed moments of magic that stayed with me in my mind so I could continue to see hope on the horizon, just enough to pull me through. I never lost that glimmer of hope on the horizon, just holding on to these little pieces of, oh, that's happiness, that's magic, that's joy. And I think it came down to really connecting to the part of me that knew there was a light in me that could not be extinguished. There was a light that just could not be ever. There was that inner flame that's going right now. And I got in touch with that somehow. So that must have been how I connected to my overcoming power. It was stronger than I knew. And it was this power that gradually took me back to my mom as an adult. And we healed. She moved on. She had the overcoming power. And we resurrected our relationship. I was also thinking, so to get away from my story a little bit, I was thinking about the people who, there's some famous people who have overcome odds and have moved on in through their overcoming power when maybe other people would have been crushed or other people would have shrunken from life. And I'll name 3 people. 1, Walt Disney. Walt Disney had huge struggles. At the age of 9, his father fell ill. I forgot the disease. One of them was pneumonia, but there was another disease where they lost it all, and they had to put little Walt Disney to work on a paper route 4:30 in the morning, and then again after school working until the wee hours. And his brother as well had to work this paper route. He had a verbally and physically abusive father and later developed mental health issues. Early in adulthood, he survived bankruptcy, but he was so impoverished that he resorted to eating dog food so he could pay his rent at times. He could have shrunk from life and given up. I mean, one of the characters he developed, the intellectual property for it, got stolen away by one of his distributors. I mean, just think of that. He had the rug pulled out from underneath him, but he maintained this vision of what Disney could become. I mean, think about all of the vision it took just to create Disneyland, all the perseverance it would take just to build Disneyland. So he overcame. Someone else, Jim Carrey. You listen to Jim Carrey, and if you listen to him on YouTube, it's like listening to a New Thought minister. He's very spiritual. What I didn't know about him was he had a history of depression, and as a teenager, his family experienced poverty and homelessness, and for a long period, they lived in a tent. He explains he bounced back from all of that later in life by using affirmations, visualizations, certain techniques that he had learned from his dance with all of the various religions. And that was his overcoming power. And he used visualizations to actually visualize himself receiving a check for, I think it was it $100,000 or something? And he got that check. He was, so that's an interesting story to read. And finally, going back a few more years earlier, Beethoven. So Amy, I'm not sure if you know this, but Beethoven began losing his hearing in his late 20s. And that progressed to almost complete deafness by later stages in life. And it turns out the Ninth Symphony and later string quartets were composed when Beethoven was completely deaf. Now, I would imagine that many people would have stopped composing. I can't compose anymore. I'm deaf. I can't do that anymore. That was I'm retired, right? But he loved it so much that I saw one story where he would actually connect a wire or a piece of metal of some kind to the piano, to his head, so he could feel the vibrations of what was going on at the piano. I don't know if that's entirely true, but maybe it is. But the fact that he did these things means he found that power in him, and he did not shrink from life. So coming back a little bit, final story I'm going to tell, coming back to my mom. She lost her husband, my dad, when he was 70. And we thought, oh gosh, how is my mom going to keep it together? And we all knew that my mom had this super best friend. You know how some people, they have like lots of, big circle of friends, but some people just have that one friend that's that super BFF, that super best friend, and kind of everybody else is a little bit more on the outside of the orbit. Well, my mom had that super best friend, and this lady was amazing. Her name is Loyola, and I loved her. And it turned out that 3 months after my dad died, Loyola died of brain cancer. And we thought, here is my mom's whole support system just crumbled from underneath her. What is my mom going to do? How is my mom going to be? But it turns out my mom found her way. She found her happiness. She found her humor. She connected with it. And she thrived for the next 25 years until she was 95 years old. So that to me, that's just evidence of our overcoming power and spirit as human beings. Reminds me of this quote. James Trapp wrote this in Unity Magazine. He said, "The Easter story is a reminder that no matter what happened to us, it does not have the final word." No matter what happened to us, it does not have the final word. So don't let anything have the final word for you. Don't let anyone have greater power than your power, is kind of the lesson for me. And I read something the other day that goes a little further about this talk about resurrecting yourself in this way. And I don't know who said this, but here it is. Please don't ever abandon yourself again, especially not in the name of trying to be seen, heard, or validated by something outside of yourself. When you become your authentic self, other people may not be happy, but let them. If people judge you, let them. You will always fail if you measure yourself to someone else's measuring stick. So this too, isn't that powerful? This too is the overcoming power. Okay, so moving along and furthering this idea, we come back to the Bible in Romans chapter 12, Apostle Paul said, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Think about that in these crazy times that we chose to be in today, right here, out of all the millennia of human existence, or however long we've been around, 300,000 years. Think about that. We chose to be right here, right now, but there's so much noise out here that I think Paul's advice is really important. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That means we've got to do the spiritual work first. That's why we listen to the music the music speaks to us, the lyrics speaks to us, the message speaks to us, the prayer speaks to us, the community speaks to us. That's why spiritual practice is so important, because it focuses here first. So Paul also said we must die daily. We must die daily. And I think that means we must die to our old ways first before we can be born anew. And one of the powerful tools, I know everybody's on mute right now, so I wrote a few of the ways. We did denials earlier, and right now I'm going to just do a couple of affirmations with you, and I want you to say these wherever you are. I'm going to say one and you're going to say it back. This is about helping ourselves die to our old ways. And one way of doing that is this age-old, Michael Beckwith says, most of all spiritual work is letting go. It's dying daily to our old ways. So repeat after me. I release the old and welcome the new. I release stress. It will not be my physiological habit. Next, I release lack and limitation thinking. I release blame and shame. Fear has no power over me. The world condition has no power over my soul. Let's say that one again. The world condition has no power over my soul. I die to my old ways. I commit myself to my own resurrection right here and right now. And so it is. Thank you. So I'm going to close with this. This is actually something I found. There was an author named Jim Palmer, and I found this at midnight last night. He was a pastor of one of the largest mega churches in the country, and he decided to drop out. He wasn't into preaching what the church wanted him to preach anymore. He was about teaching a genuine connection to Jesus. So he wrote this. It was a reimagined conversation between Jesus and his followers. So he writes, Jesus knew his death was imminent, and he was preparing his disciples for this fact. It turned out to be one of the greatest teaching moments of their time together. Jesus spoke to them, saying it was time for him to leave. His friends were distraught upon hearing this news. They said in disbelief, "You can't go, Jesus. How do we carry on without you?" And Jesus replied, "You must find my spirit in yourself." And one of them said, "How is that possible? Will you step inside of us and live your life there?" But Jesus explained, "The life you have seen in, as, and through me is also your life. We share in that one life together. If I stay longer on this planet, you will become convinced that this is about me, and you'll miss the life I'm referring to, which is also in, as, and through you." So after speaking these words, Jesus turned and walked away. At some distance, one of them called out, "But Jesus, what should the world know about you? And should the world know about you?" And Jesus stopped and turned around and said with compassion in his eyes, he said, "Don't you see? This was never about me. It was always about you. You be Jesus now." So I am complete. And happy Easter, and I'm going to spotlight you, Amy.
You be Jesus now. You be Jesus now. By mistake, or by faith, or by grace, we are led to this holy, holy place. Hungry for insight or truth, to find a way that's not as confusing as the religion of my youth. I am overcoming power of the past or my errors. I'm a overcoming power of conditions, my fears. I deny and I roll away the stone. I awaken to the absolute reality that I am whole. Chip away at what you are not, and reveal the masterpiece you got. Resurrect and be born anew. Rise up into the truth of you. Hold on to hope on the horizon. There is the light in you that will never go out. No, 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 no. Oh, hold on to the hope the sun will be rising. I said there is a light in you that will never go out, never go out, never go out. Overcoming power to stand in yourself. Overcoming power to transform and renew your mind in this crazy time. Chip away at what you are not, and reveal the masterpiece you got. Resurrect and be born anew. Rise up into the truth of you. We must die daily to our old ways before we can be born again. We must die daily to our old ways before we can be born anew. So chip away at what you are not, and reveal the masterpiece you got. Resurrect and be born anew. Rise up into the truth of you. Rise up into the truth of you. Rise up into the truth of you.